Yes, good morning, people. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk TV here on AOC Community Media. Please consider joining AOC Community Media. We should always support platforms that help us express our concerns, tell our story, and address the issues of today. Uh, Today, we're going to try to give a more condensed showing of different news stories that are affecting us in the community on the local and global perspective. So today we're going to talk about what's going on with the state of Louisiana. As you know, the Supreme Court will rule in October whether or not Louisiana can keep the new district with Congressman Cleo Fields. I want to go right into it, and then we're going to come back with some other things while I still set up, one man show. Shout out to the staff and management of AOC Community Media and to the staff and management of KIEE 88.3 FM. So I want to go right into it, and let's go with this.
Rights, democracy, and redistricting. And so I was scheduled to be on MSNBC, which I just was, with Nicole Wallace and her great team, John Heilman, Eddie Galat, a great panel of experts on voting rights and redistricting. I'm going to show you clips on all this, so you don't have to go anywhere, but make sure you're subscribed to this channel by hitting the bell in front of you right now. All right, so Nicole first asked me about what's going on in redistricting in Indiana. So if you don't know, Donald Trump pressured Texas to draw a new map, which they did. Then he is now pressuring other Republican states, including Indiana. Indiana originally said no. Now Indiana looks like it's going to do it. I pointed out that if they do that, they will get sued. Also Florida, if they redistrict, which they will also redistrict, they'll get sued. Missouri, same thing, they'll get sued. I put the possibility that New Hampshire may also backtrack on their claim they're not going to redistrict at 50-50. Hey, New Hampshire, if you do that, you'll also get sued. So we were having this normal back and forth. I mean, there's nothing normal about what's going on here and what Republicans are doing, but my normal back and forth with Nicole Wallace and her and the crew about Republican efforts to use redistricting to rig the outcome of the 2026 election. One of the many things they're trying to do to prevent free and fair elections, and that this was a key tactic in that, and what this would look like if they did that. And then Nicole asked me, "What's the breaking news?" And so I told her the two stories that Democracy Docket had literally just broken. The first, that the California Supreme Court rejected a Republican challenge. This was brought by a Republican candidate, some activists, to try to prevent Gavin Newsom's plan from going forward. And that failed. The California Supreme Court said no, didn't even wait to get responsive briefing. And then we got to the really big news, which is really, really urgent and important for all of you to pay attention to and to act upon. So I need you to watch to the end of this video, because I'm going to show you the full clips with the full context. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you what we can all do about it. But that big news is that shamefully, the state of Louisiana is in the U.S. Supreme Court no longer going to defend the map it drew, and which it's being sued over by a bunch of quote unquote non-minority plaintiffs, which I assume means they're white plaintiffs. Essentially what happened in Louisiana is my law firm and others brought a lawsuit against the state of Louisiana saying that their congressional map violated the Voting Rights Act because it failed to create two Black opportunity districts, and we won that case. Then Louisiana actually drew two Black opportunity districts. So it actually followed the court's order. It followed the law. And it got sued, as I said, by these non-Black plaintiffs, who I assume are white. That case has gone to the Supreme Court. It came back, not back down. The Supreme Court is scheduled for re-argument and asked the parties to address whether the use of race in districting is unconstitutional in all instances. That implicates whether Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is still legal. So just putting this in plain non-lawyer terms, with what John Roberts, the Supreme Court, wants to know is, hey, should we strike down the remainder of the Voting Rights Act? And we all expected that the Department of Justice under Donald Trump, they'd come in and they'd say, yes, you should strike down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Because even though it is largely unprecedented for the federal government not to defend a federal law, we've come to expect it of Donald Trump. What I didn't expect is that the state of Louisiana would now flip sides. And it is now no longer defending its own map. It's saying the map it drew, the map that it previously defended in court, should be struck down. And it should be struck down because it is a racial gerrymander in violation of the Constitution, when in fact it is just an effort to comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And in fact, that has been upheld by lower courts below. So Louisiana is just caving here to Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd that wants to obliterate the Voting Rights Act. I mean, some states like Texas and Florida and Missouri, they can redraw their maps one way. This is just another way that Louisiana can put its thumb on the scale and maybe obliterate more, in this case, Black opportunity districts, which are held by Democrats. And so it can do it it's part of this. Now, this is vitally important for democracy. And I'm going to show you these clips, like I said, and then I'm going to come back and tell you what it is we all need to do about this. But before I do, please go ahead, hit the bell in front of you to subscribe to this channel so that it gets more views in the algorithm that YouTube runs. Also, share this with a friend. It's important that other people see this. And then finally, leave me a comment. I read your comments because I need to know what content is useful for you. I don't make these videos for myself. I'm a practicing lawyer. I've got a lot of other things to do. I take my time to do these videos because I want to help you understand these issues. So please, right now, go to the comment section, leave a comment, tell me, Mark, good video, or you could do this better, or you should cover this other topic, and do that. So now we're going to show you the clips, and I'll be right back.
I guess 7 out of the 9 congressional seats wasn't enough. I guess 20 years of Republican rule wasn't enough, because cheaters don't stop at enough. They want it all. This isn't redistricting, this is rigging, this is cheating, and this is throwing Hoosier voters into the garbage. Let's call it what it is. It's authoritarianism right here in Indiana.
Democratic lawmakers in Indiana communicating, expressing outrage following their Republican colleagues' meeting with Donald Trump yesterday at the White House. The meeting was Trump's latest attempt to get state lawmakers to pass gerrymandered maps mid-decade after his successful push to get the Texas Republicans to do so. The Washington Post reports that although some Republicans in the legislature remain skeptical, others are falling into line, succumbing to Donald Trump's pressure campaign. Quote, State Representative Jim Lucas, a Republican, told the Indianapolis Star that he was more open to redistricting after hearing from J.D. Vance, a sharp turn in rhetoric from just weeks ago when he questioned on X whether it was worth putting many good state elected officials at risk because of a political redistricting stunt. It's quite an about-face. All this despite the broad unpopularity among voters of Donald Trump's attempts to rig congressional maps in Republicans' favor ahead of the midterms. And unfortunately, it doesn't end with Indiana. CBS News is reporting that Florida is next. Quote, a select committee on congressional redistricting will hold its first meetings as early as the week of October 6th. The expectation among Florida lawmakers and GOP operatives in the state is that further debate and potential passage of new congressional map would be added onto the docket for the Florida legislative session that begins January 2026. Joining our conversation, voting rights attorney and founder of Democracy Docket, Mark Elias, is here. John and Eddie are still with us. Mark, let's do Indiana first. Your thoughts?
Look, I mean, Indiana was going to cave from the moment Donald Trump asked them. I am tired of this theater in which we treat the request by Donald Trump and the initial questioning by Republicans about whether it's a good idea as actually anything other than a speed bump. I mean, in the end, they always cave. Maybe taco is true that Trump always chickens out abroad, but Republicans always chicken out when it comes to standing up to Donald Trump domestically. And so Indiana is going to cave. They'll pass a new map. And by the way, I can promise them they're going to get sued. Then Florida will pass a new map. and they are definitely going to get sued, and they're going to lose. And Missouri's going to pass a new map, and they're going to get sued, and they may lose. I give it 50-50 whether Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire stands by her proposition that she won't pass a new map. Because here's the thing: the only thing there is in the Republican Party today is proud MAGA and scared MAGA. And the proud MAGA lead the parade to do what Donald Trump wants. That's the Abbotts, that's the DeSantises. But the scared MAGA wind up doing the same thing. They're just scared MAGA, and that's Indiana. Maybe that'll be New Hampshire. Maybe it'll be some other places. But anyone who is banking on Republicans doing the right thing, anyone is banking on Republicans acting in good faith to saving democracy, has not learned the lesson of the last several years, and certainly not of the last 7 months.
So let's turn to the legal. Mark, take me through the two important developments today on that front.
Yeah, so there are two breaking news developments, both of which Democracy Docket, if didn't break, was among the first to cover. The first is in the state of California, where Republicans have tried to block that ballot initiative. The state Supreme Court has rejected that. So this is now the second effort by Republicans in California to try to slow Gavin Newsom's ballot initiative. They have now failed on both cases. And importantly, in both instances, their arguments were so weak that the California Supreme Court did not even wait to get responsive briefs. The bigger news and the really ominous news, and something I know Eddie is going to care a lot about, comes out of the state of Louisiana, where that state has now done an about face. And it says it will no longer defend the map it drew, the map it passed through its legislature. That created 2 rather than 1 black opportunity districts. Instead, it is now going to side with the Trump Justice Department and take the position that Section 2 is unconstitutional, and therefore the map they drew should be struck down. And so it's going to be the burden of carrying this argument going forward in this case, and unfortunately, I suspect in all of them, is going to rest on those of us in the pro-democracy movement, because Republican states are no longer going to even stand by the maps they draw in the face of this Department of Justice's effort to dismantle the Voting Rights Act.
I mean, what does that mean legally? Like, who stands up for the Louisiana map in court?
Yeah, so it's going to be the private parties. It's going to be the folks. My law firm and the NAACP brought the original challenge to the original Louisiana map. We won. The state of Louisiana drew a new map that complied with that court order, and now you have the state of Louisiana saying in the Supreme Court today that it's not going to stand by that. It agrees that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional. Agrees, by the way, with the Trump administration, not with us. And so it's going to be left to the private parties to brief and argue and defend this map. But look, this is something we are seeing all around the country, Nicole. I have a case that I'll be arguing in December, a campaign finance case, where the Department of Justice has walked away from a campaign finance law that has been on the books since 1974. The Department of Justice under Democrats and Republicans have defended this campaign finance limitation, and now they've reversed course, and so it is left again to lawyers like me to defend that. This is something that was unheard of in past administrations. The idea that a state would back away and not defend its laws, the idea that a federal government would not defend a federal statute, was something that simply did not happen. But in the era of Trump, it is now happening all the time.
John Howland just made the point that if we're looking for institutions that haven't buckled, the courts are one of them. Do you have faith that the courts will side with you, Mark?
Look, I am realistic about the courts. I'm realistic about the Supreme Court. But the fact is that the only branch of government that is holding at all, that is holding Donald Trump to account, is the judiciary. And the fact is that it is imperfect. It is slow. Donald Trump has shown a contempt for it and a willingness to try to evade it. But the fact is, he wants us to give up on the court. So everyone out there who's watching who says, oh, Mark is just, happy talking, you're doing Donald Trump's bidding. He wants us to believe that the courts are rigged against us and that there is no hope. He wants us to believe that we don't get a fair hearing in the Supreme Court on defending the Voting Rights Act. Why? Because that makes it easier for him. It makes it easier for people who want to overturn these voting rights laws. We have to stand up and say, we expect the courts to follow the law, to enforce it, and to follow the Constitution, and to do their jobs. And we cannot yield ground to the naysayers and the cynics, because Donald Trump wants the naysayers and the cynics to prevail over the good people. All right, so as I promised, that was me on Nicole Wallace talking about not all things redistricting, because actually there's a lot of other parts of redistricting that we actually didn't even get to. I mean, we could go on ad nauseum about what is happening in any number of other states, about the fact that Republican members of Congress have become, in California and New York, are now, pissing in their pants and have become a bunch of crybabies because they're afraid they're going to lose their seats. Where were they when Congress was trying to pass the Freedom to Vote Act that would have banned all these shenanigans? Nowhere. And by the way, when you watch Mike Lawler or the guy from California, I can't remember his name, who are constantly harping about what New York, California may do, how about they tell Texas don't do what they're doing? How about they go to Florida right now, tell them not to do something? How about they go to Missouri and say no? How about they call up the governor of Indiana and say don't engage in further partisan redistricting? They're not doing any of those things because they actually don't give a shit about partisan redistricting. They just care about their own seats. All right. But in any event, I promised you that we were going to talk about what you could do to help fight back about this. So I touched on this in the video. The most important thing you can do is to not buy into the cynicism. Okay, wipe away. If the comment you left me was, it's all lost, the Supreme Court's going to screw us, erase the comment, give me a better comment. Okay, we need to expect that our political leaders are going to follow the law. It doesn't mean I'm naive. It doesn't mean that I think Donald Trump does follow the law. I think he's an authoritarian. I've been very clear about that. But we cannot accept that as the norm, right? We have to expect, insist is maybe a better word, that our elected leaders follow the law. And that means that the Department of Justice defends federal laws. It's not just this law that that they're not going to defend. I mentioned I'm arguing a case in later this year, a campaign finance law that they've said they're not going to defend. We have to continue to insist that elected officials and people in high office follow the law. That's number one. Number two, we have to expect and insist the courts will do the same. And this is the hard one for people, because it is very easy to look at the Supreme Court or look at other courts and feel disappointed. I get it. I am oftentimes disappointed as well. But as I said, and as John Heilman said, the only thing that is standing between us and complete authoritarian right now are the courts. And so we have to insist, we have to act like, we have to go through the process and say, hey, courts, your job is to uphold people's rights, uphold people's voting rights, uphold the Voting Rights Act, uphold the U.S. Constitution. We cannot buy into the cynicism. We cannot buy into the assumption that all is lost. That is what Donald Trump wants you to do. Donald Trump wants you to believe that he is all powerful and there is nothing that can stop him. And right now, the courts are the biggest thing that can stop him. So that's the second thing we can do. The third is we all need to speak out. We need to speak out peacefully, but we need to speak out. We need to post on social media. We need to share videos like this. We need to protest peacefully. We need to put up yard signs. We need to tell our family, our friends, our neighbors, our customers, our clients, anyone who will listen. We need to tell them what is happening to our democracy and that it is not okay. That it is not okay that the Supreme Court is even hearing this case, no less may decide it against us. That if you're in Louisiana, it is not okay that your state government just abandoned its black voters and the rule of law and the map that its legislature passed. That it is not okay that if you live in Indiana or in Florida or Missouri, that your governments with your taxpayer dollars are going to do these things. I don't care whether your local representatives are Democrats or Republicans, you need to tell them that this matters. That this issue matters to you as much as anything else, and that you expect them to follow up and make it and have it be a priority of theirs as well. This may sound naive. I promise you it's not. The way in which we are going to survive this period of time, the way in which we are going to get through this is by not allowing the forces of Donald Trump and authoritarian to wear us down to the point that we have just given up. We cannot give up hope. I wrote a piece for Democracy Docket. We'll put the link in the notes here, in which I talk about my conception of hope. I promise you, it is not a gauzy, naive vision of hope. It is a very hard, realistic vision of hope. It is one that accepts that even if we do all the things I just said, we still may not be okay. It still may turn out that Donald Trump destroys democracy. But it is a hope that is born out of the fact that we all have to do the very smallest things that we can. It may not be a lot, but we have to do those small things. And if we do those small things, we may make our luck, and we may, in fact, be able to halt the spread of authoritarianism. And that is the reason why I litigate. It is the reason why I founded Democracy Docket, and it now has 20 employees that keep you up to date in its newsletters, on its website, and now in this fast-growing YouTube channel that has just crossed over 500,000.
There you go, people. You just heard from Democracy on the Docket. A good source to get that kind of information is go to the Midas Touch Network, the Midas Touch Network. Look for it on Google. It is fast becoming the #1 source for progressive information and news. Matter of fact, they're kicking all the podcasters, networks, Fox podcasts, all the influencers for MAGA. Everybody, Midas Touch Network is kicking them all to the side. That and Roland Martin and a couple of other progressive news sites. But check out the Midas Touch Network. You get a link to that person right here, that lawyer. He's actually filing a lot of lawsuits. If you are a person who believe in fair play and justice in the court system, I want to bring out these parts right here, some more information that go affect us here in the state of Louisiana. This is from Newsbreak. Millions at risk as Trump moves to cut home housing funds new budget. Remember that, people, those who are thinking about investing in new homes or fixing up your homes or just getting help. And that's not only going to affect that market, it's going to affect those nonprofits who also get funds to help people build homes or help people remodel their homes or actually grow the community. Millions at risk as Trump moves to cut home housing funds in new budget. The future of a decade-old federal housing program that's helped build more than 1 million affordable homes hangs in the balance. I'm not going to call him a president because he's more like an a-hole. Donald Trump and the House Republicans have moved to eliminate the Home Investment Partnership Program, a decision that could devastate rural communities, and we are part of a rural community in South Louisiana, rural communities where housing options are already scarce. While advocates warn of severe consequences, the final decision now rests on tense budget negotiations in Washington. This has been called a lifeline for families. In small towns across Appalachia, the home program has been a rare source of hope. Heather Conley, a single mother from Duffield, Tennessee, is among those who benefit. After years of struggling, she finally secured a modest home built with the program's funds, giving her family stability. Since its creation in the 1990s, Home has financed more than 1.3 million affordable homes nationwide. And the proposed federal cuts. Trump's latest budget calls for the elimination of HOME. That's the acronym HOME, HOME, arguing that the money could be better spent on other federal priorities. I'll be goddamn. Other federal priorities with Donald Trump would be building a super police force. That's just me added to the argument. The move aligns with broader Republican efforts in the House to scale back domestic spending for working families and low-income renters. However, the proposed cuts represent the possibility of collapse of one of the few programs that's still addressing long-term housing needs. Experts stress that the rural America would suffer most if home disappears. In regions like Appalachia, private developers rarely invest due to low profit margin. Without home, you are not going to see affordable housing in these places. One advocate noted, emphasizing how vital the program is in filling a gap that the private sector ignores. And also, here's the part about the nonprofit. Nonprofit builders who depend on home funding warn that losing it would cripple their ability to construct homes. These organizations often stretch limited resources to serve single parents, flood victims, and working families. Without the federal assistance, many projects could stall indefinitely, leaving vulnerable communities with little or no options, so forth. So the article goes on to explain some other things like the political divide in Congress, the broader housing struggles, and so forth. So there you go, people. Donald Trump is hell-bent on creating a situation, and think about it. You construct more, instead of building things, you tear things down. So you push some people, not most, into poverty, homelessness. So therefore you create the notion that you got a lot of homeless people who might be committing crime. You're actually fertilizing the ground to make crime more, let's say, more prevalent. And this is what he's doing. And that's what the Nazis did in Germany, you know. And he creates the notion of poverty and crime, and therefore you have a super police force. In other words, take the money from the poor and the people who cannot afford it, and you give the money to the super police force, and you justify the existence of your super police force that one would ask, well, why Donald Trump want to do that? Because the mindset, not just him, of the people like Stephen Miller, the Project 2025 gang, Kevin Roberts from Lafayette, they want this to exist. You create chaos, and then the few people like them, they're able to control things and go further and make things the way they want it to be made. So I got this photo right here. I want to remind people of something. Supposedly Trump hasn't been seen in a couple of days, and I want to, let's see if I can find this picture right here and put it up. Let's see, 960. That's what you have when you have a one-man show. Okay, there we go. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Okay, we can pull it up right quick. Let me go to this clip, and when we come back, we'll bring it straight back to you, what we were talking about. Check out this brother from MSNBC.
City here, regardless of what Trump and the right-wing echo chamber want to promote. And yet he and his administration are already laying the groundwork to extend this authoritarian takeover, despite the fact that his authority is only good for 30 days without proper congressional approval.
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress.
The president's authority is never over. The president's going to do what he has to do.
I don't want to call national emergency. If I have to, I will. But I think the Republicans in Congress will approve this pretty much unanimously.
Unfortunately, Trump is likely right about Republicans in Congress who have shown absolutely no interest in exercising the kinds of checks and balances outlined in the Constitution. But when Trump gets pushback in other parts of his administration, can't handle it very well. In Maryland, the president is currently trying to sue every single federal judge in the state over a deportation-related order. That suit is not going Trump's way, as the judge assigned to the case said he was skeptical. In California, where Trump deployed the National Guard and active duty Marines against the wishes of local and state authorities, litigation is ongoing. But Trump isn't content to limit his strongman posturing to government functions. He's also long been desperate to dominate the culture. Today announcing that he will host the Kennedy Center honors, admitting that unlike previous years, he interfered in the selection of honorees and, quote, turn down plenty. But as Trump forces himself into every aspect of American life, the residents of Washington, D.C. are speaking out, speaking against him.
In the past 5 years, it's gotten extremely better. I don't hear gunshots. I've never had a break-in.
He's trying to trample over everything that's been put in place that's happened. You can't erase history.
For it to be asserted by others that the federal government wants to take over other cities, that's crazy.
I actually was concerned coming downtown today because I hadn't been downtown since he said that, so I wasn't sure what I would encounter.
D.C. residents weren't afraid before, but Trump's authoritarian actions have made them feel safe in the city now. As The Atlantic put it, he's treating the district as his own personal fiefdom. Joining me now is Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC and founder of the National Action Network, and Alencia Johnson, former senior advisor to Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign and author of Flip the Tables, the Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change. Alencia, I will start with you this evening. You are in and around the Washington, D.C. area. Just tell us a little bit about how the city is reacting to this. How do people feel? Is it affecting traffic? Do people not want to go downtown? What's D.C. like right now?
Well, listen, a lot of what those residents said does ring true here, but was actually even more clear as a lot of people we know in the D.C. area are very much politically active. They are advocates, and they are also people, if we look at the demographics and the way that people vote here, they are people who speak out against Donald Trump. And a lot of those folks are Black and brown folks. And so I'm setting them up to say that these people are feeling a bit frightened, a bit like, I actually don't want to stay in a city that is a police state. And so if I don't feel as though my freedom here is safe, I have to consider other options. And maybe I have to decide whether or not I'm going to leave the city. I think there's a real understanding here in the DC area that these pictures we're seeing, they are reminiscent of what we've seen in other countries in history, and that we are repeating itself. And so it will be interesting to see how this continues to play out, as I believe the National Guard just got here today, and they're bringing more troops throughout the rest of the week.
Rev, I've had a lot of people that I've spoke to in the city describe this as basically federal stop and frisk. And, you are in New York, you and the National Action Network fought against stop and frisk when that was sort of the regular way of policing in New York City. What's your perspective on what's happening in D.C. right now? Does it have any actual connection to policing, or is it just authoritarianism?
Well, I think that if it does have something to do with policing, and I have my doubts, but it would be bringing stop and frisk to the district. But several things jump out at me. One is that he named other cities. He named after Washington. He said Los Angeles, Oakland, Chicago, and New York, all of whom have Black mayors. Like there are those cities with high crime rates that have white mayors or white population. So it's the criminalizing of Black people and the criminalizing of Blacks in higher office. This is the same man that sat 3 hours, according to reports, and watched people assault, beat, and threaten cops and law enforcement on January 6th and did nothing. He didn't call the National Guard then. And when he got put back in office, he pardoned them. So some of the most violent people we've seen in Washington, he pardoned. And lastly, I think that this is a lot about let's flood the zone, and people are not talking about Epstein in my base anymore. They're saying he's going after those Black criminals. Well, we want criminals off the street, but the crime rate is going down in Washington and other cities. But even then, we want criminals off the street because the majority of the people that are victims of crimes are us. We don't apologize for criminals, but they're not after criminals. They're looking for a way around the Epstein case and a way to go after these Black mayors.
I want to play this soundbite for you, Alencia, from Jeannie Pirro yesterday talking about D.C. and crime. Get your thoughts on the other side.
What about preventative? Do you or the president plan to do anything to address the root causes of crime in D.C., such as truancy?
My job is to try to heal the victims and prosecute the criminal. everybody else can deal with rehabilitating the individual. I honestly am not concerned about why they commit crimes. My concern is if they commit crimes.
Valencia, clearly these folks are only going to be in the city for 30 days, at least for this particular extent. What does it say that Jeannie Pirro, who's speaking in part for the administration, even though she shouldn't be, is not interested in solving any issues that lead to crime? She really just wants to go in and punish. What does that say about what this administration is really doing?
Well, to piggyback off of what Reverend Sharpton just said, this is about criminalizing Black and brown people, right? So when I think about where I have heard about some of these checkpoints that are already in the city, they are where Black and brown people are. I'm actually seeing videos of people being arrested, and I believe they were detained by ICE. And so, They actually don't care about the root cause of crime. And I don't think Republicans want to solve crime. They want to continue to have these images that you're showing. They want to be able to act as though they are quote unquote tough on crime, but continue to criminalize Black people in cities that are led by Black mayors. The one thing I want to zoom out and say too is this is giving us, I will say it should give Democrats, because a lot of Black people are saying the quiet part out loud, but Democrats should be calling out the racism that is here, the racism that is motivating this right here, as well as the racism that is motivating what's happening in Texas and all of the gerrymandering. It is an attack on Black leadership and autonomy, and it's an attack on Black people in this country. And unfortunately, Donald Trump has filled his administration with Fox News correspondents who don't even know anything about the law or community safety.
Rev, what should other cities, seeing what's happened in Los Angeles, seeing what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now, if you were having a conversation with mayor or soon-to-be mayors in New York City or Chicago or other cities that are in blue states, because clearly Trump's not going to go to Houston, Texas, what would you advise them to do to prepare or to sort of slow down this kind of takeover should it be coming to a city near you?
I think I would immediately have my police chief come out with the data and say, we do not need you, we do not want you. And I would have my city attorney see if there's a legal way to protect the citizens of my city from being stereotyped. I would throw roadblocks now. I wouldn't wait for it to come, because if we see this president Saturday come out of Alaska with no deal with Putin, he's going to look for another scapegoat, and he'll grab the first Black mayor within his reach.
Valencia, I want to get to you really quick on this. Clearly, Trump isn't just happy with sort of his authoritarian rule. He wants to sort of dominate the culture. He's now going to be taking over the Kennedy Center Awards. I want to play some sound from him talking about the fact that he's never been honored. Get your thoughts on the other side.
Since 1978, the Kennedy Center honors have been among the most prestigious awards in the performing arts. I wanted one. I was never able to get one. This year, it's true, actually. I would have taken it if they would have called me. I waited and waited and waited, and I said, the hell with it. I'll become chairman, and I'll give myself an honor. Maybe I'm going to honor, next year we'll honor Trump, okay?
It was 30 years ago this month at another awards ceremony where someone got on stage and said, if you don't want someone who's trying to be all up on stage and all up on your videos, maybe you shouldn't be involved with this kind of situation. Trump clearly wants to be all up and involved in everything. What do you think the response should be of people who might get honored by the Kennedy Center after this point? Should they say no to the president? Do you think people should just take their money back? What do you think is the proper cultural response to this kind of takeover?
Well, if you notice, there was a cultural response when he actually shifted the leadership in the Kennedy Center. You had a lot of great leaders such as Shonda Rhimes and folks actually pull out. And what I think you'll see are actually those conservative, right-wing people and artists who actually support Donald Trump starting to be honored. And here's the thing. When people say that culture isn't important, if it wasn't so important, Donald Trump wouldn't be attacking the Kennedy Center and our cultural institutions. And quite frankly, I hate to say this, part of the reason we are still dealing with him is because he knows how to use culture.
Yes, you heard it from the idiot in chief that he want to give himself, make himself head of the Kennedy Center. So much craziness with this person, and I can't believe we have people here in Lafayette, Broussard, Youngsville, St. Martinville who vote for this idiot and vote for this idiot governor. It's almost like idiocy or being an idiot is very in style with MAGA. Hypocrites at the gate, if you want to say that words. Check out this picture right here. And they say he hasn't been seen in a while, but they got some new stories came out today. I know they say he has health problems. And it's not the whole notion of people want to mock Donald Trump and be discourteous to the so-called president of the United States. But hell no, he mocks everybody. Remember when he clowned the disabled man? And remember when he clowned, he talked to people any kind of way. So you're saying that because Donald Trump is a white Caucasian, that we shouldn't mock him after he mocks other people? Well, you know what? In his own words, he's sick, right? Look at his hand on this screen, right? So you got to ask the question, could it be a result of too much grabbing by the you-know-what? You could figure out the word, and I know this is a family-oriented channel, but we got to keep it real because Donald Trump do not respect other people and children because you know what? He was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and who knows what they did with the young people under the age of 18 and 17 and so forth, right? Well, my speculation, just like Donald Trump drove out speculation, what's going wrong with his hand, could be a result of too much grabbing by the you-know-what, people. I mean, if you grab, he might have gotten a hold of a bad one. And so now he got to deal with his hand problems and whatever else problems he might have. He the one who said, I grab him by the you-know-what. He said it on camera. Why MAGA don't address that issue? Or, well, that's just locker room talk. Well, what happened when you in the locker room, when you grab too much in the locker room, that's what the results is right here. So since the news media wanted to put the pictures up and circle where his hand, in other words, the advice to the so-called president, don't grab too many by the you-know-what. So that's the people, who's the people want to elect, somebody like that. So, just keeping it real. Here's the headline today from Yahoo News. Trump heads off debt rumors by finally appearing in public. They actually were saying he was dead. His MAGA base on Twitter, X, I don't even read that junk website. President Donald Trump, I can't say the word. Donald Trump has shown signs of life after going missing for 4 days. As the president swollen cankles, bruising on his hands, too much grabbing by you-know-what, problems walking straight, mental gaffes, fueled speculation about his mortality. Trump went most of the week without public appearance. He probably was getting some treatment somewhere. However, the president, 79, was spotted by reporters on Saturday morning on his way to a golf outing. Dressed in a white polo shirt and a red MAGA hat, he shook supporters' hand on his way to the Trump National Golf Course in Sterling, Virginia. His granddaughter, Kai Trump, accompanied him. Wow. I wouldn't be shaking his hand, people. I wouldn't be shaking his hand. He said grab him by the you-know-what. Why would you want to shake his hand? So anyway, so much for that. We still are dealing with a lot of serious issues. I want to play this before I go into this. I played it last time we were on the air, and I want to play it again and give you some more perspective on this in a full video after that.
I warned you throughout last year that these days would come if people helped re-elect Donald Trump. Now, why am I saying this? Because Trump has declared war on Black America. What else is it when he orders the military to provide resources to law enforcement and then unleashes those cops and the National Guard into the blackest city in America? And then he promises to unleash them also in other black cities in America. And we know they're coming into black neighborhoods because Trump said that blacks commit most of the crime in this country, which isn't true. And he said that to thunderous applause in a black Detroit church. So, hello, stop and frisk, and bye-bye due process. Bye-bye equal protection. Bye-bye Fourth Amendment. Bye-bye reasonable suspicion, probable cause, see you later, and so forth. I say this because I've been a practicing criminal defense and civil rights attorney for almost 2 decades. And I know what's going on. I know what's coming. Now, to be good for my colleagues and me to have this beefed up law enforcement. But here's the thing. Crime has been on a sharp downward turn since the 1990s. There's no need for militarized cops, but there is a need for some of the very programs that Trump got rid of in order to pass his big ugly bill. Specifically, there's a need for early childhood education. There's a need for Head Start. There's a need to increase the federal minimum wage. There's a need to increase affordable housing. We need him to stop firing black women employees in D.C. I mean, think about that. He's firing so many black women in the federal government that unemployment for black women is rising, and for black people generally. Then he want to send militarized cops into our neighborhoods at our sons. I mean, that is crazy. In fact, what this is, to be exact, is authoritarianism imposing fascism to protect white supremacy. Once again, this is authoritarianism imposing fascism in order to protect white supremacy. And oh yeah, the pro-black imposters who helped Trump get reelected is now trying to sound outraged that he's doing this to D.C. But he wouldn't be doing this, perhaps, if they hadn't told so many people to either vote for Trump or vote the couch. That is why they're pro-black imposters. Remember, stay woke.
Yes, you heard it from one of the defiant lawyers, and we're going to have more from Brother Augustus. And he has a lot of insight onto what he thinks is really going on. I'm pretty sure a lot of other black folks might agree with this. And I want to read this news article also in the Louisiana Illuminator and from other sources, a couple of news items. As you know, this week, Governor Jeff Landry, I hate to call him governor too also, because he's acts more like an idiot or a Trump wannabe. Today, not today, the other day, let's see, I'm trying to find it. Officials cut the ribbon Thursday on a state prison for women. That was last week, I think. Louisiana's first new state correctional facilities in 35 years. The new $160 million Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel will have at least 958 beds. Now, people, you see, when we talk about they just want to build prisons, they just want to invest in prisons, it's not the fact that they want to just improve prison life for people. They want to have more prison beds. That's the whole goal, more prison beds. The 15-building campus is spread out over 7 acres and includes a rehabilitation center. That's what they say. It's about rehabilitation. Classrooms and a gymnasium. Healthcare facilities and a treatment center for women who deliver babies while in prison. That's what they do in Louisiana. That's what they do. About 1,000 women state prisoners have been housed at the nearby Elaine Hunt Correctional Center until the historical flooding of 2016 rendered the facility unusable. Since then, incarcerated women in the state custody have been held at facilities around the state, including the former Jetson Correctional Center for Youth in Baker. Hunt Correctional Center, which was opened in 1972, has since been repaired and is now used to hold men in state custody. Plans to replace the state-only women prison stalled in the state officials as the state officials sparred with the Federal Emergency Management Agency over whether the damaged campus should be rebuilt or repaired. Plans call for 472 women currently at the Jetson to move to the new prison in the coming weeks, along with the 400 others from Louisiana Transitional Center for Women in Madison Parish. The state is not disclosing exactly when those transfers will take place. I think we have a call. Let's get this call right quick. All right, caller, just hold for a second. Just hold for a second. All right. Okay, go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good morning, Brother
Good
Jay.
morning. Good morning,
like
Brother
always.
Brother Wallace, what's happening, man?
Oh, man, you know, as always, you're always having good topics, good information. Now, whether the information is being absorbed or not, I can't say that. But I am absorbing a lot of it because, as you know, we talks about this all the time, you know, the gerrymandering that Trump is trying to put down. Their army that he's putting in these places, you understand me, to make sure that when his dictatorship really take effect, he'll have them in place to overthrow what he wants to do. You know, we fought for voting rights. We fought for a lot of things in our life as black people, people of color, even white women fought for voters' rights. But we got to understand all these things is coming like to an end, you know, with Donald Trump. You know, he is a dictator now. He wants to be a dictator to the people of the United States forever. He don't want to get out of being a president. You know, he wants to be like Fidel Castro, you know, Putin, Won Tong, or whatever his name is. His hand would just fall off, you know, with whatever that is, that's up there, you know.
Too much
for him being.
One would think, Brother Wallace. I mean, I'm just being logical. I know I'm being sarcastic. I know I'm mocking him like Governor Newsom of California. But the whole point is, think about it logically. If someone was to say, well, I grab a whole lot of you know what, and my hands start showing some signs of something going on, like I was working under a car and the transmission fell on my hand. But one would think, well, maybe that was too much grabbing by the, you know what. Now, he said it. I didn't say it. He's on camera. He said, man, he didn't even deny it, Brother Wallace. He said that's and everybody else agreed with that's locker room talk. That's just us men being men talking. Well, other people would think, well, you know, what happened when you get hold of some bad food, you're going to have some repercussions. And hope I'm not a doctor, but you grab too many and you grab the wrong one. But you see, MAGA, you
somebody
can't mock
might have
MAGA.
pissed on his
MAGA
hand.
gets mad when you mock them, but they can mock you. You remember the man who was reporter who was disabled, and he kind of like had this kind of stuff like throw his hand, and you know how we have people who are physically disabled and they can't move their hands or their body. He mocked the man. He mocked the reporter, right? But nobody could mock him.
Right.
Like, so I'm saying, so that white Caucasian in the MAGA movement in Lafayette that supports him, so you saying I can't mock him, but he could mock black folks. You know, he could mock Colin Kaepernick. He could mock everybody. So what you're saying about his hand, Brother Wallace, is exactly true. You know, so that tells you his character, and those who go into the Catholic Church on Sunday or goes into the Baptist, Methodist Church, and Episcopalian and all that church, all these churches, they are hypocrites because they see a man with no moral values and they are praising him because he done some things to please them, but not looking at the man himself being a morally bankrupt person. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, well, your governor wanted the Ten Commandments in their in schools. One of the commandments say, "Thou shalt not kill." You know, and what a lot of those people going to church for, to make sure they have their weapon in order to kill if they need to kill. You know, look at the people that's getting shot in the back. These kids that's getting shot in the back,
right?
Because they're pulling little pranks and stuff like this here. If you give kids something to do other than think about pranking somebody, maybe these things wouldn't happen. But they want to cut all the parks out, all the recreation out, all the after-school programs, the things that will keep a kid mind occupied. They're not really focusing on that. They focus on making sure that they keep their guns with all these big clips, you understand me, that they could put more ammunition in them, you know, and things like this here. So why we keep allowing this to happen? Well, I guess when it's going to really go into effect, everybody's going to want to grab a sign and go protest. Why are we not? Well, they had a little protest, I think, Monday or Saturday, you know, downtown. You know, but why are we not protesting? Because we too busy, you know, with our boots on the ground. And where those fans at, you know?
And the thing is, brother,
And then
our elected officials, and here I go back, beating a dead horse, chicken litter, skies falling. We have to hold our elected officials, black and white, accountable. If we can't ask these questions from the black community, are you a supporter of the MAGA movement? The picture I got on screen, the mayor president of Lafayette, and I use her for example. It's not just her. The mayor of Broussard, the mayor of Youngsville, the mayor of New Iberia. Do you support everything MAGA is doing to roll? Because, you know, I just read an article, Brother Wallace, about millions at risk as Trump moved to cut home housing funds, right? One of the many, many things he wanted put into effect to do away with helping people. So my theory is that maybe the MAGA movement wants crime, because if you create poverty, here comes crime. When was there ever a poor person who did not commit crime more so than people pushed into a corner? And you got to feed your family. You got to live affordable. You're not living on. You don't want to live on the streets. So what happens? That collides, and it's not that everything could be blamed on poverty, but most of the crime in America is start with poverty. Those who have and those who have not. So I like your take on that. If you got a minute to spare on that.
Well, I'm getting ready to see more drugs come on the street, you know, because people are going to want to start selling drugs. Where the people going to be using the drugs, where they going to get the money from. They're going to start holding up stores and different things. You know, you're getting ready to see something, Brother Jay, that we never seen when we was coming up, you know, because we never had this hard law enforcement like we're getting ready to have now, you know, where they got to bring the National Guard out on people in communities, you know, and like everybody is recognizing, they putting all this stuff in black communities. And a lot of black people will help them get other black people. You know what I mean? For no reason at all. How do you fix stupid? You know, I don't think you could ask Google or what's her name, you know, Lexus, how to fix stupid, because I don't think they know, you know. And people are just sitting back, relaxing, you know. It's all about me, I, you know, what I'm doing, and not what we supposed to be doing.
Well, one of the
We
things
as
I
a
emphasize
community
is
of people.
to look at how much money in that so-called big ugly ass bill. Excuse me for cussing. How much money gonna be taken out of
Mm-hmm.
Medicaid, Medicare funding, and programs for people impoverished, and given to ICE agents and his secret police force and other law enforcement entities. And it's not that we're against law enforcement entity, but come on now, people. Everybody could see the writing on the wall. Blind man Stevie Wonder could see if you take him from poor people who are already poor and giving it to creating a super police force that does not have any type of constraints on them. They could come, they could pull you over, they could put a gun on you, they either could shoot you or arrest you, and for no reason at all, like you're seeing in Washington, D.C. right now, where they have harassing these young black males, and even though they're not doing anything, they pulling them over, arresting them, and stuff like that. So if this comes everywhere, so people are not really free. Only a few people gonna be free. The ones who live in those gated community in Youngsville and so places like that. So you got to ask the question: is that right to take the money from the poor and give it to creating your own private police force?
The rich? Well, no, it's not right, Brother Jay. And we got to understand, we already have X on our back because of the color of our skin. You know, if and they got some white kids. You understand me? They've been in the sun too long. They're gonna get my color to be my color, your color. You know what I mean? And that's what's gonna hurt a lot of things. People of color, this is who they're gonna attack. You know, the Mexicans, that is brown people. You know, anybody darker than them, this is where they're going to attack. They're going to come in the community and attack people. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're doing wrong, yes, the police, that's what they're crazy for, doing wrong. But to accuse somebody, to make them confess to something that they didn't do, or to force them to do something that they wasn't doing, shame on them. And they've been doing this, but it's more open now, more, how you could say, Donald Trump demand for this to happen.
Right.
You know, and that's what's going to happen, you know.
I got one.
We getting ready.
Be getting off on that, like they be all excited sitting in the room. Look at that. We arrested a bunch of black folks. We just pull them, and we could do that thing. You know, they not so tough. You know, and his disrespect for black folks in general, because, you know, if you go back and look back when he got into office, what he said to Colin Kaepernick, don't have no insight about nothing concerning the NFL, but he just wants to say that because that was a black man taking the knee. That tells you his long time or eternal disrespect for black folks. And so I'm linking the people together. If you MAGA and you voted for somebody who don't care for black folks, you therefore don't like me because I'm black. I mean, that's logical thinking.
Right. Well,
brother, you still there?
Yeah, faded out. You know, I wasn't hearing you through the phone line.
Okay.
But again, Brother Jay, you know, you got to understand, you know, where we going. You got those that's looking to have the money. Long as they get the money, hell with you, you know. Long as you're not stepping on their toes, hell with you. And this is what we are trying to get at. We're not trying to say, our elected officials is bad.
Right.
But get some backbone. Get some some wit about yourself to say, hey, look, they're in it. I'm gonna be in it. You may not be in it now, but you're gonna be in it before it's all over with. So now you better make up your mind now, or try to make up your mind later. Trying to make up your mind later is a little too late. Making up your mind now, you're right on time. So, and that's the way it is, Brother Jay.
Yes, sir.
You know, so we talk about it on the Community Matter Show. You're talking about it on Real Talk TV Live. You're talking about it on Open Line. Everybody's talking about it, but seem like no one wanna listen because everybody wanna be stuck on stupid.
Well, in this
And
area,
like I
I
said,
criticize, and that just because the nature of everything is critical, right? Everything can be critical. People say, well, all you guys do is criticize. Y'all get on television, y'all criticize the problem. Why don't y'all do something about it? Well, here's the thing. If we don't have any platforms like this AOC or limited black radio, you're not part of the corporate bottom line corporation that sell the black community all types of stuff, but never give them any real airtime. Or the 15-second sound bite on KLFY or KATC, right? The whole point is to have platforms
right.
to talk about these things. If it's critical, it's critical, right? Don't get mad because we criticizing the system, because the only thing you're doing when you come against us for criticizing is upholding the system in its existence. So people have no idea. Our children don't even have no idea of Nazi Germany and how it was created. And you living in a capitalist society akin to pre-Nazi Germany, meaning black Americans are living in America, a capitalist society, which can turn into a Nazi Germany in a minute. So we need to study that history and understand. It's great that we know some of us embrace the African diaspora, but it's good to know how Europeans have co-opted black folks into being into this capitalist society. And so this is the reason I am always critical of the system I live in, to help improve it. And if it get people thinking that the Mayor Blanco and others who some black folks have put in office, if she's on the side of the people that's trying to oppress us, well, we need to question her on that, and do she put policies to help us? That's the whole explanation of why I do the things the way I do them, being critical of a lot of things.
Yeah. Well,
it does not
Jay,
make no logical
I'm
sense
like
why
this
to
here.
support people who don't support you.
Yeah, but I'm like this here. You running a city parish.
Right.
The city is just as important as the parish. Now we got Old Lafayette, we got New Lafayette, and we got Upper Lafayette. The Old Lafayette don't seem like nothing is really getting done in Old Lafayette. We got bad roads. We got major highways that's bad. Cameron Street, is bad. We got Moss Street is bad. We got Jefferson Street is bad. Man, we got Surrey Street is bad. We got Simcoe Street is bad. And I don't never see them surveying to fix these things, man. But you want to go on the south side of town and make sure the roads and all of that is done good. So if you're going to do one side with the tax dollars, do all of it with the tax dollars. The schools, we pay property tax. Property tax go to a lot of the schools. Make sure the school on the north side is being ran properly too, not just on one side of town, you know. And those are the things that we need to start looking at, other than a fan in our hand, popping it, putting some boots on, putting your boots on the ground. You know,
Every
all that's
weekend.
good. All that's good. You got to have fun in what you do. Laughter is good. Love is better than it all. You know. So this is what I'm trying to tell people. You know, wake up. My theme song. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. You know, time to get to action. Let's talk about it. Let's be about it. Don't just look to get off a job. You understand me? Because we know you can't say nothing on your job, because if you say something on your job, you ain't gonna have no
Well,
job.
hold up. That applies
But
to the
they,
political spectrum too, because black politicians can't say nothing on their job either. As a politician, whether it's in Baton Rouge, whether it's on the Lafayette City Council, they can't say nothing either. Or the New Iberia City Council, they can't say nothing either. So it's the same everywhere.
no. But the thing of it is, uh, uh, the people that elected, you understand me? The people elect them.
Right.
But when they get to their post, it seems like everybody elected them, but the people that voted for them, you know, they tell you you gotta sit there for a year or two before you can say anything. Bull crap, you know. Um, if you stand up, be a man, guess what? You will be respected as a man,
Right.
you know, a woman or whatever. But if you're not gonna stand up, yeah, you're gonna have some tough time. Look at Janet Crockett. You know, she's having tough times. You understand me? But she's not giving up. Okay, long as you don't give up, you're gonna be strong. If you start giving up, that's weakness. And then once they start showing weakness, they got you. You know, that's including in families, bruh. When you start showing weakness, they got you. You know, so you just got to keep on being who you are and what you are. Like I say, you can't fix stupid. You know, you gotta let stupid be stupid. Like what's his name? Forrest Gump say, stupid is as stupid as you are. You know.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, Brother J, look, I'm gonna let somebody else come on. Somebody else might have something to say more than me, because I gotta start looking into real estate right now, bro.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
so we gonna be good, and appreciate you
Check
taking
out
my
Community
call.
Matters.
Appreciate you giving me a chance
Yeah.
to say what I got to say about
I want to say,
all this
brother
bull
Wallace,
crap.
I want to say thank you very much, man, for making your show a part of the community. One of the fastest rising show on AOC Community Media, Community Matters show, seen every Friday from 10 to 12. We really appreciate that show that gets the community together and get the community informed.
Thank you, Brother Jay. I need to thank you for allowing me, or really being my mentor, for being a part of the Community Matters show, because you was the one that really inspired me to do a lot of the things that's going on with the Community Matters show right now. You
Yeah,
know,
but the
so
inspiration started
I'm
years
good.
ago at KJCB 770 AM. You in the great Bunny Landry. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah.
where the inspiration started for
Bunny
me.
was the one. You know, and I miss my ball. You know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, be well remembered.
So Oh yeah,
Man,
oh
we're gonna
yeah.
do something with
So
Bunny.
okay,
We're gonna,
brother
we're gonna
Jay, we're
fix it
gonna
up
holler
and
back
remind the
at you, bro.
community about Bunny back in the day.
We'll holler back at you later.
All right, brother.
All right,
Check
peace
you later.
out.
Check you later. Thank you. That
Right
Brother
on.
Wallace, check him every Friday. Every Friday on this very same station, AOC Community Media. Again, people, I done had my AOC cup of coffee. You know, that's why I'm always on edge on when I get in front of the camera because I had too much caffeine. I don't give a damn. I'm like Donald Trump in a sense, in a bad sense, because he has no redeeming value as a human being, and the people that support them apparently don't either. So I could say that about the MAGA crowd because they don't give a damn about black folks. You know, in Kanye West, I think he was kind of off a little bit, you know, when you said George Bush does not care about black folks some 20 years ago. Anniversary of Katrina going on. Well, guess what? I think you was off. You meant Donald Dumb Trump. That's what you meant, Kanye West. He don't give a damn about black folks, and that we don't necessarily need him to care, but just do your job as a person who are overseeing the whole notion of black folks living in America. Let me put it that way. I want to go into another clip from the Defiant Lawyers. I think this brother has a lot to say concerning concerning black folks' existence here in America. And I think, let's see, we'll pull him up. I hope he didn't disappear off the map. Let's see. Yeah, there he go. And we're going to play Attorney Augusta Colbert, attorney at law from out of Houston. Give that brother a look at. He has some great podcast information all the time, and hopefully we'll have him live on one of our platforms soon. So check him out.
Ready and willing to have a serious dialogue on this question. I have a question. Why do whites hate blacks generally? So I use the word generally because I'm not speaking or asking this question from an individual perspective, because I'm not asserting, nor am I asking whether every white person hates blacks, but whites generally, whites holistically, whites as a whole, white society. Why does white society, why do whites hate blacks? Now, for those of you who will deny that it's true that whites generally hate blacks, the proof is in the pudding. There's no way to deny it. So hang around. I want to talk about that for a few minutes. So yeah, don't even waste my time with it's not true. I mean, it is true. We have exhibit after exhibit after exhibit after exhibit, and we're going to get into that. Let's have a serious dialogue. I want you to answer me in the comments as well. And again, the question is, why do whites hate blacks generally? That is the question that I'm asking. I'll give you time to think about it. And this is a question only for intellectually honest people, not trolls, but people who are ready and willing to have a serious dialogue on this question. It's a question I don't think America has ever asked. We've never had a serious dialogue about this. Again, why do whites hate blacks generally? Now, let's start with the definition of hate. What do I mean when I say hate? Hate, defined by Merriam-Webster definition, is an intense hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or sense of injury. So when I say hate, I'm using the Merriam-Webster Webster Dictionary's definition: an intense hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or sense of injury. It could also be extreme dislike or disgust, antipathy, or loathing. I mean, those are strong words, but they describe what we have seen coming from white people toward black folks generally over many, many, many years. Where does this come from? What is it in white culture that brings about this type of hatred? If we can ever get an answer to this, have a serious discussion about this, maybe we can see how to deconstruct that hatred. So I'm raising the question. Again, please feel free. In fact, I encourage you, I want you to comment about this video. All right? Now, why whites hate blacks? So here are some reasons that I offer as a reason why whites hate blacks generally. Number one, a justification for greed. Now, I got to look to scripture on this because I'm a Christian. I'm an attorney, but I'm also a Christian. In fact, I'm a minister. So I got to go to the scripture for answers. I'm not going to look to psychologists or anthropologists or the such. I'm going to go to the source of creation. All right, God. And so in the Bible, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10 says what I believe is the number one reason why whites hate blacks. For the love of money is a root of all evil. It is through this craving that some have been led astray and have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves through with many acute mental pangs. So the first reason I believe whites hate blacks is to justify greed. If you believe the Bible, I certainly do, it says the love of money is the root of all evils. Hatred is an evil. So the root of that hatred, according to scripture, is a love of money. And we can so clearly see that because there's one thing that blacks, Africans have that whites not only crave, but need. And that's all those natural resources on the continent of Africa. A lot of the continent of Europe does not have all of those resources and wealth. So Europeans saw all this wealth on the continent of Africa where African people derive from. And they, because of greed, because of a love of money, desired that. And then they justified it with hate and racism. In other words, we can take what these people got. We can take it because they are inferior, because they are less than human, because they are heathens, savages. So because they are less than human, because they are savages, because they are heathens, we can take from them. We can kill them. We can colonize them. We can enslave them. Because, this is the way God created things. This is the natural order of things. So it is not a violation of anything for us to take what they got, kill them in the process, and use it for our own personal benefit. So the first reason is a justification for greed. That's where a lot of the hatred comes from. Because again, scripture says The love of money is the root of all evil. So hate is an evil. What is the root of that hate? Greed, the love of money. What else? Satanic influence. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 gives us some insight here. It says, "For we are not wrestling with flesh and blood, contending only with physical opponents." In other words, humans. "But against the despotisms, against the powers, against the master spirits who are the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spirit forces of wickedness in the heavenly supernatural sphere." So this tells us that the fight that we see between whites, blacks, and any other group actually is really coming about because of the influence of demonic forces in the unseen world. So demonic forces influence people to hate other people. So the fight that we African Americans and Africans around the world have with whites, it's really demonic forces that are behind this fight. It's really those demonic forces that brings about the hatred that whites have generally against blacks. Now, if you say that it's not true that whites generally hate blacks, just hang on. I'm gonna prove that whites generally hate blacks. So, number one, it's a justification for greed. That's where the hate comes from, according to 1 Timothy 6:10. And it comes from satanic demonic influence, according to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Where else? Twisted racist theology. Twisted racist theology. There are verses in the Bible that whites used way back in history to once again justify the hatred of black people, the oppression, the enslavement of black people. Twisted racist scriptures. Genesis chapter 9, verse 20 through 26. "And Noah began to cultivate the ground, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and became drunk, and he was uncovered, and lay naked in his tent." So at this time, there were only 8 people on the planet: Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their 3 wives. This was after the great flood. So Noah, after this flood, essentially got intoxicated. And Ham, the father of Canaan, glanced at and saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. So Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it upon the shoulders of both, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. So let me explain. Again, there were only 8 people on the planet: Noah and his wife, their 3 sons, and their 3 wives. Their 3 sons were Shem, Ham, Japheth. Ham is the progenitor of the black race. Shem is the progenitor of the Semitic people, the Jewish people. And Japheth is the progenitor of European people. All people on the planet descended from one of these 3 people: Shem, Ham, or Japheth. Blacks descended from, again, Ham, and specifically from Ham's son, Cush. So when Noah awakened from his drunkenness, he was angry with Ham for seeing him naked, and he cursed Ham's son, Canaan. Notice he didn't curse Cush. He cursed Canaan. And the African people and the African diaspora are descendants of Cush. We're Cushite people. So the curse was not pronounced on us. Yet, European people began to propagate the lie that the curse of Canaan covered all black people. And consequently, it was biblically acceptable to enslave, to oppress, to hate, and to treat black folks the way black folks have been treated for many years. All because of a twisted, racist interpretation of these scriptures. But once a lie is told and gets into the psyche of people, that lie is very difficult to break because, again, it just gets into the psyche of culture and is then propagated. And folks end up hating people based on some lie that was told, racist, twisted lie that was told many years ago, thousands of years ago. And you ask them, why do you hate this person? You don't even know this person. Why do you hate them? And they oftentimes, if they were being honest, would just say, well, that's what I was taught to do. That's what I heard my daddy say. That's what my granddaddy said. That's what my mother said. That's what I heard. That's what I seen. That was a part of my family. And they heard it and seen it from their family. And you go all the way back to this lie. Huge, huge lie. Racist lie that has justified so much wrongdoing toward African American, the entire African diaspora. All right, what else? Let's keep looking. I'm offering you what are, again, the reasons that I identify for why whites generally hate black people. And then there's a fear of black people. A fear, because we read from Merriam-Webster's dictionary, right here, hate, defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is an intense hostility and aversion usually deriving from fear, anger, a sense of injury. So hate oftentimes is born out of fear. Fear. And so there's a fear of African people, fear that African people will rise up one day and seek vengeance. A fear that if the continent of Africa ever became free, then Europeans would not have this vast source of wealth to steal and pillage and to take through colonialism, a fear. So we got to keep these people down. We got to keep oppressing these people. We got to keep these folks fighting one another. We got to keep these folks traumatized, because otherwise we fear that they will rise up and either take vengeance for all the stuff we've done to them, or they will just begin to start demanding that we treat them fairly. That's fear. So I offer to you a few reasons for this hatred. Again, they are a justification for greed, because we saw in the scripture that the love of money is the root of all evil. Satanic influence, because we see in scripture when two people are at war with each other, there is demonic, satanic influence in the unseen world that's bringing that about. Twisted racist theology, the twisting of the story of Noah and his 3 sons and grandsons. And last of all, fear. Fear of what would happen if the African American, the African person, the African continent, especially sub-Saharan Africa, is ever liberated. What that would do to Europe, the impact that would have on the continent of Europe. Because again, this wealth that Europe has robbed from the continent of Africa for hundreds of years, even predating slavery. Before slavery began, before colonialism, Europe was taking advantage of Africa with all kinds of unfair trading. And then they just got the bright idea, instead of, unfair trading with the continent, with these black people, let's just take over the continent. And it was during the Conference of Berlin in 1883, 1884 that they decided to just carve the continent of Africa up and take it, and therefore take the resources. And so colonialism was eventually defeated, but a new form of colonialism began. And this is where Europeans began to use corrupt African leaders to continue robbing Africa through those corrupt leaders. We're seeing that now. Now, I told you I was going to show you, prove to you, with solid proof, that whites generally, holistically, hate blacks for the 4 reasons that I gave you. What proof might I have? Well, number 1, colonialism. That's rooted in hatred. That's rooted in greed. The atrocities that the European people committed against African people, African nations, to colonize that continent is rooted in all those things that we said. Fear, hatred, greed, racist theology. But what else? Slavery. Slavery. 246 years of chattel slavery here in America. And chattel slavery is the worst type of slavery. It's where, under the law, a person is not even considered a person, but property with no rights whatsoever. None. Stripped of all humanity and decency. That is hatred. That's satanic. That's demonic. That's greed. That's fear. Lynchings. Rapes. You see all of the mixed race African American people here. It is the result of the rapes, the child molestations that European people visited upon African people after they arrived here. I've been to the continent of Africa. I've been in Ghana at the point of no return and was told the story of how the European slave traders would pick out the young women as they were entering that castle there, the point of no return, and would pick them out for rape. And of course, the plantation owners, once they arrived to America, just completely had total, absolute control over young women, children often. Thomas Jefferson essentially was raping a black child. You're under the law. I'm an attorney. Under the law, you cannot say that a child consents to sexual relations. A child cannot consent. And I think her name was Sally Hemingway, I believe, 15, 16 years old. She couldn't consent to having sex with that grown man, Thomas Jefferson, and gave birth to multiple children. That's evil, hateful. Let's go deeper. I'm giving you proof. Jim Crow. After slavery was abolished, the 13th Amendment, which was, we celebrated actually the anniversary of the ratification of the 13th Amendment just 4 days ago, December 13th, 1865. So I think it was like 185 years ago. My math could be off. But after slavery was abolished, hateful whites created another system called Jim Crow. And the intent of Jim Crow was to basically keep black people in a state of de jure slavery, if you will. To keep black folks in a continued state of second-class citizenship. This is when the KKK was formed to terrorize blacks, to say essentially, despite the fact that the 13th Amendment has been added to the Constitution, the 14th, the 15th Amendments, we're still going to keep you in this place relegated to second-class citizenship through Jim Crow laws, Black Code laws. This is hatred. This is hatred. This is greed. This is demonic and it's fear. I'm just giving you the facts. Segregation during Jim Crow, the separate but equal doctrine. Keep those people away from us. Keep those people away from us. Segregate those people. We don't want those people mixing with our people. They are inferior. They are less than human. They are not on our biological level. Terrorism, again, through the KKK and other hate groups. Systemic racism that we contend with even today. How do we see it? We see it with mass incarceration. And don't you dare for a second come up with this stuff about, well, blacks commit most of the crime. That's why they are suffering from mass incarceration. Most of the crime in this country are committed by white people. And some data does show that blacks do commit some crimes disproportionately, but that's because of the trauma that we've dealt with in this nation. No other group of people in America has been traumatized like African Americans, with the lone exception of Native Americans. And even they are treated better than African Americans. There's not anything that we can do as blacks to overcome the fact that we are black. As Justice Roger Taney, Chief Justice Roger Taney, or Taney said in the Dred Scott decision, these people from Africa have no rights that we whites are obligated to respect because they are black. Other groups came to America and could assimilate and basically become white. The Irish, the Italian, the Jewish people, but not us blacks. We will always be black in their eyes. We couldn't come in and get the privileged status of being white like these other groups. We're white. We're other. We're different. We are an insular group. And we are stamped with the badges and incidents of slavery and blackness. Mass incarceration, wealth disparities. Don't get me to talking about how whites have 10 times the wealth that the average black family has. Healthcare disparities. Don't get me to talking about how black folks receive an inferior level of health care in hospitals and doctors' offices and medical insurance and so on. Education disparities. Just disparities throughout these various systems, which evidences, which proves hatred, white hatred. At every turn in this country, we have been met with pure white hatred. When Barack Obama was elected and then reelected for the president of this country, the hatred that man and his family dealt with was almost otherworldly. Donald Trump for 6 years said he wasn't even a legitimate American. Mitch McConnell said his number one goal in life and the proudest moment of his many years in Congress was working to ensure Obama's failure. And he specifically singled out the fact that he was able to keep Obama from putting Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court. said it was his mission, his goal in life, to see that Obama was a failed president. Well, he wasn't. He was not. Tell you who was? Donald Trump, who only came to prominence and became the president of this country because of white backlash for the election and re-election of Donald Trump. Trump became president because white Americans, because of this hatred, wanted to put somebody in office who could help them prevent a black takeover of this country. I'm just speaking facts. Pure facts. The proof is in the pudding. Why do whites hate blacks? Generally, not every single white. There were whites during slavery who fought to abolish slavery. There were whites during Jim Crow who died during the Civil War to end slavery and oppression. Not every single white person hates black people. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying when you look at white culture, white traditions, white morals, white institutions, you see a consistent and deep hatred. All the Confederate monuments in this country, thousands of them, all to suggest this is our country. You will never be a true citizen in this country. Change the laws all you want, but in the heart and soul of white society, you are black, you're second class, we hate you, and we always will. Just the facts. Just the facts. I hope we can overcome it. I'm very doubtful. As a man of faith, I believe that it's going to take the Lord himself. Because again, for those reasons that I gave you, it's hard to overcome that level of hate for those reasons. Here they are again, just to remind you. Justification for greed. I mean, all the wealth that whites have amassed from the resources that blacks own or the work that blacks have done, whites are not willing to give up that wealth and admit that they created racism to justify this greed. And anyone who talks as I do here is labeled a Marxist, is labeled racist, race baiting, to hold on to that wealth. Satanic influence, twisted racist ideology, and fear of man. If I wasn't a man of faith, it would almost feel hopeless. But I am a man of faith, and I know that God is a God of righteousness and justice. Psalm 89:14. And we're here in the Christmas season, and some of my favorite verses of the Bible we see oftentimes on Christmas cards. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 and 7 talks about a son has been given, a child has been born, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God, Prince of Peace. And in the seat of David, he's coming to rule the nations, to establish a kingdom of both righteousness and justice. Righteousness meaning equity, meaning fairness, meaning no discrimination, no racism, but a place where everybody is somebody. That's what Jesus is coming. So even if we don't achieve it in this age, there's a new age coming. There's a new order coming. There's a new world order coming. And I'm not talking about some antichrist stuff. I'm talking about the promise, again, from Isaiah 9, 6, and 7. Jesus is coming to establish a new world order based on both righteousness and justice. All right. This is a lawyer channel, YouTube channel, but I realize I ended up just preaching a little bit. That's fine. That's fine, because again, I'm both a lawyer and a preacher, and the law is oftentimes based, at least the ideal of the law oftentimes is based in scripture. All right. So thank you for listening. You have a good one. Peace.
There you go, people. You heard it from attorney Augustus Corbett. I want to play that in there, even though it was an older clip. It applies in these times, what is going on here in America. I mean, you don't have to believe me or attorney Augustus Corbett, but you could at least take something from that. Those who are of the biblical persuasion, or those who are more practical like myself, secular. I mean, you could get a lot out of what you believe in. I want to play this from Dollamore. We have a few minutes left, and I want you to check this out also from the Dollamore Daily Podcast, a great source.
Hey, happy Saturday. Welcome to Idaho. If you have or have not ever had a desire to visit Idaho, you're here in my home state, the state in which I was, for the most part, raised, but certainly born here. So welcome along for the ride. Let me talk about a couple of things. Both the videos I'm going to do today deal with white supremacy, deal with the Republican Party being the most organized, effective, violent white supremacy organization on planet Earth. And it is culminating in a way that it didn't in the first term of Donald Trump. They are attempting to reshape how we educate our children based around how dumb Donald Trump thinks about history, thinks about our past, thinks about how we should look at our country and critically analyze well, there's no critical analysis where it relates to Donald Trump, but they are trying to reinstall Confederate monuments that have been removed from military bases, paintings they want to put back that depict traitors against our country, in this case, Robert E. Lee and his enslaved property, human beings that he owned as slaves. Let me read this headline, and then we're going to cut to a clip from CNN where Joe Borelli, who's the former leader of Republicans on the city council in New York City, the guy certainly from Staten Island, but he had some troubling, some stupid, some unsurprising things to say about how we should celebrate the ancestors of of Americans who were Confederates, and that's just the way it is. And look, it's not the hill I would die on, but blah, 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 blah. But first, let me read this headline in one paragraph from the New York Times to give you a little context about what they were actually talking about. Again, this is the New York Times. Pentagon is reinstalling portrait of Confederate general at West Point Library. West Point, the Army's military academy. They're going to put a painting celebrating an enemy of the United States, and more specifically, an enemy of the United States Army. Okay? The Pentagon is putting back up a portrait of General Robert E. Lee at the military academy as the Trump administration seeks to restore honors for American figures who fought to preserve slavery. Before I get to the paragraph, let me give a little critique for the New York Times. As the Trump administration seeks to restore honors for American figures, he relinquished any claim to being an American when he fought against Americans in order to preserve slavery, to preserve the ability for humans to own other humans as property. But go, you do you, New York Times. You tell your tale, New York Times. Here's what the painting that they're reinstalling at the American Military Academy has in it. the Pentagon is restoring a portrait of General Robert E. Lee, which includes a slave guiding the Confederate general's horse in the background to the West Point Library 3 years after a congressionally mandated commission ordered it removed, official says. So is Robert E. Lee just a celebrated American, someone whose contributions to America should be celebrated? Or, I think it's self-evident, was he a traitor against the United States of America who's responsible for carnage and death of Americans, of American soldiers, of American military members, who also enslaved dozens of human beings, owned them as property, abused them as he wished? Joe Borelli, again, the former GOP New York City councilman, in the course of talking about this issue on Abby Phillips' show on CNN, had this to say, and brace yourself for the most ridiculous argument that you may have ever heard.
This particular painting would not be my hill to fight over. It wouldn't be my hill to die on. But to put things maybe in context, to perhaps broaden the conversation a little bit, there are a lot of Americans out there who trace their ancestry back to the Confederacy as white people. And I think they have to wrestle with their own ancestors, and to some degree they have to be proud of who their ancestors were. Not everyone in the South was a slave owner. I'm not trying to diminish that. But these people are the descendants of a group of people who decided to act a certain way, and they have to digest that. And it's important to remember that when we solved the Civil War, when the war ended, the government chose not to execute these Confederate leaders. They chose not to jail them, not to execute them, but they went in a period of Reconstruction. And so, if there was some balance perhaps in the 1860s and 70s and 80s, perhaps there deserves to be some balance now where we have to wrestle with the fact that some white Americans do trace their ancestry back to this period of history.
No, that is not an excuse for doing this.
There you go, people. I want to end with this ridiculous stuff from this guy on CNN, and Dollamore put it in a proper perspective. Again, we want to close out. Check us out on the Open Line Radio Show on tomorrow on KIEE 88.3 and at the same very station, AOC Community Media. Shout out to everyone who make this show possible. And I want to see you guys next week. Thank you so much.